Can a $250 smartphone have good cameras? To find out, I replaced my iPhone 16 Pro with the Nothing CMF Phone 2 Pro. I took it on a helicopter flight, shot photos on a boat tour, and of course I used it in everyday life. I had a lot of fun taking photos with all 4 cameras, especially since it also supports RAW format, which is really rare in such an affordable device. But I also noticed some weaknesses, and for some people it will be worth spending more money on a smartphone. When that is the case, you will learn in this review. At first glance, the CMF Phone 2 Pro's design stands out. The back uses several stainless steel screws that are not just decorative but functional. You can remove them and buy a back cover that has MagSafe compatible magnets for accessories, and you can even attach a fisheye and macro lens. That's pretty cool, but wireless charging isn't supported. Unfortunately, I don't have that extra back cover. The case of my orange model is partly plastic, and honestly my first impression was that it feels cheap. Considering the price though, that's okay. It's only 7.8mm thick and weighs 185 grams, and the device feels comfortable in the hand. The IP54 certification provides splash and dust protection, which is great. On the frame you will find a power button, a button for the essential space, I will talk about that later, and the volume rocker on the other side. On the bottom there's a USB-C port, unfortunately only USB 2.0, and a SIM slot with dual SIM support and room for a microSD card up to 2 TB. There's a fingerprint scanner under the display at the bottom, and it works very precisely and quickly. For its price, the CMF Phone 2 Pro offers pretty good cameras. The main camera has 50 megapixel and a 24mm focal length. There's also a 50 megapixel telephoto lens at 50mm focal length that provides 2x optical zoom. The setup is completed by an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera at 15mm, and for selfies there's a 16 megapixel front camera at 22mm. I took a lot of photos in different lighting conditions, and I really enjoyed that. I also like the 50mm telephoto lens because 50mm is a great focal length. But of course it's not a very strong zoom. As you can see here with the sunset at the Berlin Cathedral, colors can look really nice. I especially love that you can shoot in RAW format and edit the photos later. That's very rare in budget devices. It's a pity though that you can only shoot RAW at 12 megapixel, not the full 50. I flew with the phone in a helicopter, and I think the photos turned out quite well. Compared directly to the iPhone 16 Pro, however, I noticed that its dynamic range is much larger than the CMF's. Obviously the iPhone is much more expensive and has to deliver better photos. Still, I have to mention it. I think the cameras are great, but they can't match a flagship. A fairer comparison of course is with other budget smartphones, and compared to the Samsung Galaxy A36, which is even a little bit more expensive, the Phone 2 Pro's main camera is noticeably sharper, at least with the standard settings and 12 megapixels. In 50 megapixel mode, the Samsung is sharper, and the wide-angle cameras are very similar. I also took it on a boat ride, and I enjoyed taking photos. Especially in good light, the results are really good for this price range. The selfie camera also takes very good photos in good light. The ultra wide-angle camera shows significant weaknesses in low light. It also has much lower resolution, which is a shame. In low light, the main camera also produces noise of course, but not as much as the ultra wide. You can record video in 4K with the main and telephoto cameras, and the main camera delivers pretty good video in good light. The ultra wide maxes out at 1080p, and the quality is noticeably worse. The front camera also only records in Full HD, so the resolution isn't very high. Aside from that, the quality is good and the colors look nice. By the way, we are on Instagram now, where we will share some reels and behind the scenes stuff in our stories. So if you're also on Instagram, check us out. We are called My Next Tablet of course. The CMF Phone 2 Pro has a 6.77-inch AMOLED display with 1080 by 2392 pixels. The refresh rate is 120 Hz and the maximum brightness reaches 3000 nits, really a lot. The average everyday brightness is about 800 nits according to the manufacturer. In real life, the display is very nice. It's sharp enough, offers vivid colors and deep blacks thanks to AMOLED, and even in direct sunlight it works quite nicely and everything is readable, and that's something that many budget smartphones don't offer. They're usually a bit darker. And compared to the Galaxy A36, for example, the CMF's display looks much brighter and has more contrast. Now to the one speaker. Here you see one of the biggest weaknesses of the CMF Phone 2 Pro. It only has one mono speaker. The earpiece doesn't serve for stereo, so it doesn't get loud. While the volume is enough to stay understandable in loud environments, the sound quality leaves much to be desired. Compared directly to the Galaxy A36, the CMF phone lacks bass and just doesn't sound nice. It's pretty bad. The sound is flat and sometimes tinny. For occasional voice messages or calls, that's not a big problem, but if you regularly listen to music or watch videos without headphones, you will be disappointed. That's a real shame. Inside the Phone 2 Pro, you find a MediaTek Dimensity 7300 Pro processor paired with 8GB of RAM and either 128 or 256GB of internal storage. As mentioned, you can expand storage with a microSD card up to 2TB. In our benchmarks, the CMF Phone 2 Pro performed like a typical mid-range budget smartphone. In Geekbench 6, it scored slightly higher than the Galaxy A36, but just behind the Motorola Edge 15 Neo. Devices with the Snapdragon 8 Elite, like the Xiaomi 15 or Galaxy S25 Ultra, obviously play in a completely different league. In the 3D Mark Wildlife benchmark, the CMF Phone 2 Pro is on par with the Galaxy A36. For most everyday users, the performance is more than enough. Only in very demanding games, you will notice that it's not a high-end device. We tested the Phone 2 Pro extensively with Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. In Fortnite on the Epic preset with 100% 3D resolution, we only got about 5 FPS on average. The game is pretty unplayable. With low graphics settings, I once played Fortnite smoothly at around 60 FPS. But I couldn't reproduce that again. Maybe that's due to an update. In any case, currently it won't run above 10 or 15 FPS on any setting, which is obviously terrible. Call of Duty Warzone Mobile runs pretty well. With low graphics settings, the performance is quite smooth. You can even set some options to high without notable frame drops. Only rarely did it stutter. But with really high graphics settings you can't play because those aren't even available. It's obviously not a high-end gaming phone. The phone ships with Android 15 and Nothing's OS 3.2 interface. The features are pretty much the same as on the last current Nothing devices. An interesting feature is the Essential space, which has its own button under the power button. If you press it, it takes a screenshot and lets you add a note or voice note, and you can view them together later. AI then helps you organize everything. I think that's pretty handy because I often take screenshots to remember something. For example, I took a screenshot of an Android 16 article because I want to look at the design more closely later. And the Essential space reminds me of it. Do we really need an extra button for that? Well, maybe not, but it's something different. According to the manufacturer, the Phone 2 Pro will get Android updates for 3 years and security updates for 6 years. That's very good for a device at this price point. The Phone 2 Pro has a 5000 mAh battery, so a fairly large one. In our battery test, it lasted 21 hours. For this test, we always loop an HD YouTube video at maximum brightness in an endless loop. That's just a test for fair comparisons. In everyday use, the battery lasts a long time and I usually got about 2 days out of it. I mainly use Gmail, Chrome and took lots of photos. If you play lots of games or record long videos, you will get about 1 day of use. I really enjoyed reviewing the CMF Phone 2 Pro and I think it's a great phone at $250. I especially like that it has a telephoto camera and lets you shoot in RAW format. Both are often missing on budget devices. And if cameras are important to you and you want to save a lot of money compared to a flagship, the Phone 2 Pro is definitely a good choice. The bright display is great as well. However, the speakers are clearly a weak point, and if you like to watch videos without headphones a lot, it's not fun with this. For that, there are much better options like the Samsung A36. And if you want to play demanding games, it really is worth spending more money on a phone. In the near future, we'll publish 2 more budget phone reviews. So my advice is, don't buy a new phone yet, subscribe to the channel and watch the other 2 videos.